But we do have a fight tomorrow night on Saturday. Obviously, this segment has already run on a fair bit, so I'm only going to do the main event, but it's absolutely a main event worth talking about. Kevin Trailblazer Holland versus Derek, I don't know his nickname, Brunson. This is a fun one. Kevin Holland is just a fun fighter who had one of the best 2020s of any fighter in the UFC, any combat athlete in general, with 5 wins. And you love that he's taking this fight in March because I believe that 5 win streak for him last year started in June or maybe May. So getting off to start even earlier than last year and looking to continue that momentum. And he did it with such an exciting style. I think it really starts with his reach. He's got an 81-inch reach, and it just lets him fight so long and stay so comfortable at long distance, where he can just he probes with the jab. He throws. He stands in like kind of a karate taekwondo stance where he like leans pretty heavy on those legs, keeps his hands nice and low, so he can like get in there quick, and uses a lot of probing kicks to the body, like side and front kick style, more than like a traditional roundhouse style. And that straight is deadly from long range. You saw that most in the knockout of Buckley, but he tagged him multiple times in that fight with that shot, and he landed it against others. What I love about him is he seems to have an answer for every range. So at long range, he has his reach advantage, just letting him be comfortable to probe with those kicks and land that heavy straight, which he always keeps loaded. Like you see, he does a lot. He keeps his hands pretty low. He uses his left hand, lead hand, a bit more defensively because he always has that right hand just ready to fire on like a very quick and straight trajectory. That's kind of his game at long range. At mid range, he combines pretty good head movement, like really slick with his like ooh type moves, and really accurate, deadly hooks. That's what I see again and again when fighters try and break his long range game and charge in. He's really good at sliding out of the way and then landing those hooks. Most notably in his stoppage of Anthony Hernandez, which the was a knee to the body that like got the drop, but right before he did that, he landed that hook beautifully, and you see that him do that in most of his matchups this year at least. And then at short range, it gets really creative and vicious. He just uses his reach well to frame the opponent and just throws whatever like seems to come first to him. Like after it, jumping knees a lot. He'll whip those elbows. It's so fascinating. He uses his reach to generate such momentum. We saw that most, of course, against Jacare Souza with that crazy finish off the bottom, but he really just like flails his arm out there. Even on the feet, you see him throw these like kind of loopy hammer fists sometimes, especially when it gets wild at close range. That reach really helps out with his defense. He just never is at a disadvantage at long range and able to frame off at mid range. That head movement is super slick when he wants it to be. The only knock on him is sometimes he just looks a little careless. Like sometimes he just drops his hands and the head movement isn't quite there. Like he's just thinking about how to trash talk, not how to fight. The moment that really jumped out at me was that Darren Stewart fight. I thought he won the first 2 rounds pretty comfortably, and then he looked a little tired to me in the third round. Like that creativity and that violence, that like randomness of just throwing whatever comes to mind and exploding does take its toll. And I noticed he threw a lot less, especially in the second half of that third round. And he just kind of gave up on the takedown defense and got like pinned pretty well in half guard, and Stewart ended the round with some ground and pound. So the cardio and the focus are going to be two big questions for me for Holland. And then on the other side of the ring, you've got Derek Brunson, who has been just a streak stopper as of late. He started that run by stopping Elias Theodoro, who was on a 3-fight winning streak in the UFC. Next, he took out Ian Heinisch, who was on a 5-fight winning streak, 2 of those wins coming in the UFC. And then he took out Edmund Shabazian, who was on a 10-fight winning streak, undefeated, with 4 wins in the UFC. So taking on a hot guy who's surging is exactly what Derek Brunson has been doing as of late. And he's been doing kind of exactly what you'd expect from a guy who's been in the UFC as long as he has, he's been putting together the striking and the grappling so beautifully, and he's just such a powerful athlete. That's kind of the first thing that comes to mind when you see Derek Brunson, and he has his NCAA college wrestling background, which was a huge asset going in. And then when you're matched up so many times in your career against guys like Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida, Israel Adesanya, you've just the striking builds and builds and gets to a high enough level where it's also a huge asset for him. He I really like the way he fought Ian Heinisch the most, I think. I mean, Edmund Shabazian, he had the finish, so that as well. But he stays very steady. He's constantly probing, testing, and threatening you, but it's very dangerous. There's always some teeth behind those like 1-2 combos that he throws out. His biggest weapon on the feet, I talked about the athleticism. It's that like charging, sprinting style where he just lets power shots go. And it's super double-edged because his chin, even in the most recent fights against Heinisch and Shabazian, his chin does still stick out as he runs forward to like barrel with those shots. And you saw Robert Whitaker like place that head kick beautifully as like Brunson just ran into it. So he hasn't fixed that tendency, but he's tempered it. He's he contains it very well in bursts. He hides it and he waits for his moment to explode, which it is a huge weapon for him. It's worked out great against guys like Machida. So having it not go away don't turn away from what took you to the dance party. I really loved his defense in the Heinisch fight as well. He had this looping footwork and head movement style, and you see with like that's what works best for wrestlers, like a Dan Henderson with the overhand, Khabib with what Dan Hardy likes to call the eagle punch. When they keep their movements loopy and ducking, then you don't know if a takedown or a punch is coming, and that's the advantage of being a bit less efficient than like the technical striker. And Brunson did it so well, especially in the Heinisch fight. He'd step out of the way, loop, and then he could go to the body lock, go to the single leg, go to an overhand, go to a hook off the counter, and you really had no idea which he was going to do, and it kept his opponent guessing. And in the Shabazian fight, you saw that steadiness that's testing and threatening at the same time, where he kept initiating these grappling exchanges, kept testing him with like power shots after the scrambles. And as soon as Shabazian gassed a little, which I think this was a fairly short notice fight, so maybe the cardio wasn't quite where he wanted it to be, but either way, once Shabazian gassed, Brunson swarmed him with the ground and pound. And so there's kind of 3 sequences or exchanges I'm going to be really looking for in this fight. And the first is going to be at long range. Holland's going to have a bit of a reach advantage, and this is a southpaw orthodox matchup. So that beautiful straight right hand that Holland really likes to keep loaded, is he going to go more for the karate style or more for the high guard? You see him switch it up in different matchups depending how threatened he feels on the feet. So is he going to use his reach advantage more offensively or defensively to look for that straight? Then the second is going to be how much is Brunson going to charge in there with that like run head up and just swing, make you worry about the power bombs, so you hopefully can't time the chin. Those hooks of Holland I talked about, I think could be huge in those scenarios, but the carelessness I alluded to obviously also could cost him. And then the close range. Is Brunson going to be able to get the body lock or get the single leg off those like loopy counters? Or is Holland's creativity going to come up big? He is a brown belt, I believe, in jiu-jitsu. So I don't want to say that Brunson for sure is going to have a grappling advantage. In fact, when Holland came into the UFC, that's kind of, I think, what he was more known for as a grappler. He's certainly subverted and switched that around with the 2020 he had. But the thing that gives me confidence for Brunson is that kind of wildness of Holland. If he just tries to go for like a silly knee or think elbows when Brunson is clasping his hands, I think he's going to end up on his back. And if he's thinking offense all the time, then the steadiness and poise of Brunson, I think, of just doing the right thing, one small decision at a time, could put him in a great finishing ground and pound type position. But is really going to have to watch for those straights at range and not charge into one, and especially the hooks. Really interesting main event. Can't wait to see how it turns out. I do like Brunson as a underdog a lot, just based off the finishing of like streakers he's been having and the kind of lapses of focus that you see from Holland. I think Brunson is the exact worst kind of opponent to capitalize on that. So can't wait for Saturday night, and I'll be ready to talk about it Monday.